All right, what is up, Partner Up? Isaac, I've made it. I've made it to the 3-digit podcast club, episode 101.
Hey, we need some champagne or something, to be honest with you. You know?
I'm surprised I didn't get a bottle or something in the mail. I feel slightly disappointed.
Alex, welcome to Partner Up, man.
Thanks for having me.
At our big Nearbound.com event. So we formally announced the merger of Partner Hacker and Reveal, which is wild. Alex, your story and how we got to even know each other when you were at Perkuto, I feel like is as illustrative as any. You were inside the beast. So in terms of like selling MarTech, right? So you were the AE that either didn't like partners or worked with partners. And then you went over to the partner side where you led sales at Perkuto successfully and, grew revenue tremendously and ended up with a great exit there. You've seen both sides of this equation. How might your story be the thing that partner people need to like internalize to build that partnership with sales orgs?
Yes. So in general, thinking about how I interacted with a partnership org when I was at Adobe or /Marketo, is I didn't really work through the partner org. I was always like kind of that rep that I started out in the SAP ecosystem. So I understood large enterprise sales. I understood, the value, like primarily the value of working with partners and their reps that actually knew how to co-sell. So when I got to Marketo, like I understood how to co-sell effectively, and I kind of lone wolfed it. I had my account list, and I was like, all right, we got partners out there, could be drift, right? And say like, what accounts are you guys in that were not? And I just knew how to work that list independently, and I never worked through that partner org. And frankly, at the time, I think like most sellers, I didn't have like a true, like the respect for the partner org that I have today. I think a lot of sellers just view them as like, hey, where's my leads? If you're not feeding me leads, what are you doing for me, right? There wasn't like this collaborative thing that was going on. And then after Adobe had acquired Marketo, I had already started Forecastable kind of in the background, and I couldn't continue building that software company while being employed by Adobe. So I ended up cutting a deal with a professional services firm, figuring that all of these little Marketo shops are going to get sucked up by the big systems integrators over time. Accenture, Deloitte, or whatever was going to look to acquire those companies. And so that organization was looking to double revenue and flip the company. And then, of course, through that motion, as we were going through that exercise of doing that, COVID hit. And then over 60% of our forecast completely tanked. Like it came to a screeching halt. It was a mad dash. We had no idea kind of what was going to happen or what was going on. And frankly, the co-sell motion is what saved us completely. We had deployed the technology or the Forecastable tech at the time. And I said, hey, why don't we go in and go talk to these AEs and try to get as many AEs from Adobe as possible into the mix, co-selling with us. And before we knew it, inside of a single quarter, we had over 80 enterprise account executives from Adobe in the technology, co-selling with Perkuto in the background. And that recovered our lost forecast dollar for dollar. And then we overcompensated, like blew revenue out of the water and flipped the company inside of like 8 months.
Like why did it take that crisis moment to make that? It seems like low hanging fruit given how effective it ended up being. Like what was preventing that from going on before that?
So there was nothing that was preventing it from happening before. We'd already started, I think it was back in that December before COVID hit, we'd already started the co-sell piece of things and started getting kind of all those motions in place. What's our co-sell plan? What are we doing with these account executives? And what we were doing, and this is a great play for any MSP or any service provider in general, is like, hey, in order for co-selling to work, everybody has to be making money. In order for the sales reps to actually care about what it is that you're doing and to feed you business, you have to make the money first. And that was kind of our MO, is like, we have to go lean in and show that we're ready to go help them hit their number. And so what I told my reps there was, I said, hey, why don't we go in, let's go to all these reps, let's figure out what their top 10 targets are for the year. Let's get their full account list, but let's say, hey, what accounts do you, because you already know once you get your list, okay, well, these are the ones that I kind of cherry pick off the top. This is what I'm going to focus on for the year. And I told my reps, I want you to go in, build their buyer maps for them. And then I want you to schedule 1-hour meetings with them and walk through all of the work you did in terms of account planning, points of penetration, things like that. And when we showed up to the table in those 1-hour sessions and did full like account planning session, their top 10 accounts, all of the customer accounts kind of came with that. They're like, hey, if they're willing to lean in this like fashion with us, then we're willing to go lean in and reciprocate. So by us giving first, like their reciprocation just did wonders for our business. Should always give first. And every single partnership that I do, it's like, I don't want that. Like if they give first to me, I'm upset. Because like the second you give first, it's almost like they're obligated to reciprocate. Like you're going to get business out of that. So if you're always in the habit of giving first, even if you don't receive something back for the first one or two deals, eventually you're going to get someone's attention, the right kind of attention, and it will work out for you.
Your process of having to go over to the dark side and figure this out, so to speak, is what allowed you the mental space to be like, okay, what would work for me on the other side? Do you feel like if you'd been approached in the same way at Marketo by, your future self, like how would have you objected to it, or you would have handled it? Like if someone had actually come in and truly helped you, you think you would have leaned in the same way that those AEs, at Adobe did with you when you were at Perkuto?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was very partner friendly to begin with, just because like my personal perspective as an AE, I almost never used our internal professional services, not because they were incapable or anything like that. But I felt like by giving a partner the business, a capable partner with a great reputation, right? Giving a capable partner the business, like they're dependent on that business to keep their lights on, right? Whereas if you're a large SaaS company and you start bringing in your PS org, granted, they're going to be very good at their jobs and, hopefully, and they implement really well. Then they walk away, team disperses, and the customer's kind of left alone. And when they need something again and they call up, they may not get those same resources. They may get a completely different team, and they have to reestablish that relationship and reestablish that trust. So like from day one, I was pretty much like on the partner side. So when I got to Perkuto, I started doubling down on that. So not only did we start doing the upfront work and, doing the account planning and things like that, but we were managing really large enterprise accounts at Perkuto. And we basically went in and said, okay, we have these account managers that have all these great relationships that engage with these accounts every single day. And so we created a process whereby sales and account management or customer success would align on a regular basis so we could identify, are there new stakeholders? Are there new initiatives? Are there challenges? And we had a process for keeping the customer success managers and the AEs at Adobe apprised of all of that, which, was one reason that we stood out.
Everyone internally at your team, if you're an account executive, you are beholden to what we might call, vendor outcomes. Meaning, as a software company, it is the outcomes that we are looking to achieve as a business. If you're partnering with a service agency of any sort that has a contractual relationship with your prospect or with your account, they are beholden to customer outcomes, not vendor outcomes.
Correct.
Right. And if you're honest with yourself, especially in today's environment where every purchase is, being scrutinized X times more, the only things that are getting funded right now are clear paths to customer outcomes. So working with a company that is literally paid based on customer outcomes, not your vendor outcomes, sets you up a lot closer to where, the red lines are getting approved and the blue lines are getting signed, on signature, blocks.
That is a really good way of putting it. The only thing that ever matters are outcomes in general, and the customer outcomes are always trump all others. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It's funny. I heard Jill Rowley say recently that she said salespeople are used to celebrating when the gong rings, right? Deal closed. She said that they shouldn't. That's just the signed contract. They should celebrate when the customer has gotten value, right? Get that customer to value. And she said, like, you don't have to be an altruist to do this. The more customers you get to value, the quicker. Those customers, your best customers, are the best tool you have to sell new customers. I know that's hard. Like right now in this time where everybody's like, we're missing our numbers. Go get me more deals. How do you balance that? Like, hey, I want to focus on making sure we don't just get them to sign at the dotted line, but we get them to value. When you've got these, you've got your CEO or your CRO, CFO telling you, you got everything you do has to be closing more deals, hitting more numbers. Like, how do both of you, recommend approaching that in this market?
Well, in general, when I even back in Marketo, I used to get lectured sometimes by my manager about how much time I'd spend with customers. Like, back then, it was just like, because when a deal closed for me, and I didn't necessarily track the value they were getting. Like I wouldn't get like to that degree, right? But I would go in and make sure I did check-ins with the stakeholders that I was closest to during the cycle. Hey, is my team delivering? How are we doing? Stuff like that. And when you set up, and then remember I said I was also very partner friendly. And so I would establish that communication cadence with the partner and set expectations with them as the account executive. It's like, hey, we brought you into this deal and you deserved it. You earned it. Like, you're a great partner. I say, but after the sale closes, let's at least talk every couple of weeks or every major milestone. Just shoot me an update, let me know how things are going. And that update will prompt me to shoot a text over to one of my stakeholders in the buying side, or it'll prompt me to make a phone call or schedule a meeting to check in on something, even though I probably already know what happened, whether it was good or bad. That cadence was just wonderful.
Did you get pushback for the fact that you were not sending people to your ProServe organization?
Sometimes, and eventually they did away completely with, I think they ended up doing away completely with comp for ProServe. Like they weren't paying at all on it at one point, which really incentivized partner stuff. But even then, there still needed to be a bunch of enablement done. These reps need to know which partners to go to and why, and how to set up those cadences and set up a meaningful, bi-directional relationship with a partner. It goes a really long way. And if you're competing against ProServe internally, that's a tough position to be in. As a seller, frankly, because I don't really care who implements, as long as they implement properly and take care of the customer, it doesn't matter to me.
Imagine a seller who's partnered deeply with an expert and maybe a series of other technologies on how they, supposedly work together. And they can point to, Isaac, this was kind of to your comment, the, 1, 2, 3 customers that they had driven that change for. Like they were the change agent that helped these companies. And it doesn't even have to be the same partners, but it was bringing that expertise and the people tied to their outcomes together. To me, if I'm in sales and I want to sell today, I can't just rely on product marketing. I can't rely on sales enablement. I can't rely on the words that some content marketer is putting in front of me that's going to be the thing that sells this feature into this account. What I need to rely on is my ability, right? My ability to work with the people that my customer needs to work with to achieve their objective. If you're truly caring about your customer, then you're going to be stacking a list of people that you've truly helped behind you and you're willing to bring into the next conversation.
Absolutely. And another, just, talking about how another way that partners can add value, and maybe along that same line, is what we did. One thing we also did at Perkuto, again, it's through the lens of me being an AE at Marketo. I was like, what do I need? Like, I always wished as a Marketo AE, it's like, yeah, I can go send that white paper that Marketo produced or send them to that blog post we produced. But again, it's not as believable because it's coming from me as a sales rep, and automatically like the credibility goes down, right? But if I send them to a third party site and say, hey, look, this company did this analysis and here's what they did. It's Marketo, let's say, versus PartNUp. And that's maybe the conversation I'm having. I encourage you to go over there and experience this and read about it, right? And like, I always wanted that third party thing. And so when I got to Perkuto, I'm like, hey, what third party things did I wish I always had access to? And let's go build that for these AEs. And so what we did is I went ahead and invested. I found a bunch of PartNUp consultants, and I said, who also had Marketo experience. I said, let's go into the nitty gritty details of the things that marketing operations professionals who can smell BS from a mile away. Let's go get into the nitty gritty details of the true differences when it comes to running these two marketing automation platforms. And then we did an analysis of it. We scored it. We put it up on the website. If you Google Marketo versus PartNUp right now, it's still probably up. And then we went to all the AEs and I built battle cards and decks saying, in this scenario, use this. In that scenario, here's the email template, here's the assets, use that. And it served as a disinterested third party, for the AEs at Adobe.
What about the interplay between kind of like the day in the life as a rep, kind of what you saw at Perkuto as it started to cascade up the importance tree, if you will, in the sales organization? So as you're working bigger and bigger accounts, I'm assuming you would work, outside of what Adobe calls NAMs or named account managers, into all of a sudden there might be an RVP, like a regional vice president involved in some very important deals. Or you might, be a topic of conversation inside of, pipeline reviews or forecast calls. What's missing from that layer of let's assume that our partner listeners right now take that advice and you know what? I need to convince my sellers that they need to build their own body of work underneath them, right? By working with experts in the market and being proud to sell themselves and not just their company, right? So I'm going to go with my sales team bought into that vision. Great. What's the first line of resistance at that RVP level or at that sales manager level where they're like either friendly to the partner being involved or like, get this partner the heck out of my deal?
Yeah, I've run into that a few different times, and that like there's tactics you can do to get around that kind of stuff. And I ran into it over there as well. It's like I had a couple of reps tell me, "Hey, my manager asked me like, why are we putting so many eggs in that Perkuto basket?" And I'm like, "Because I'm awesome, man. You know it." Like anyway, it just messing around, but
right.
But in general, we were delivering tremendous value, and a lot of these reps were putting a lot of their eggs in our basket, and and it was called out a couple of times. And so those folks, and in fact, I think the couple of managers that it came up with, they didn't have a deep Marketo background. They came from different product areas within the Adobe organization at the time. And so maybe they just didn't understand like the niche that we lived in, and how important that world was. And there weren't a lot of great partners out there that are delivering like high quality enterprise delivery. And so for me, it was about meeting with those individual managers as like executive alignment is really where that comes into play. I already had advocates across, let's say you had the frontline managers and then second line managers. So two of them, and each of them had 5 frontline managers reporting to them, each of them, with 40 reps beneath them in total. And so it's a matter of getting some of those other frontline managers as advocates and having them talk in group discussions as peers to those other frontline managers to get buy-in. And then, of course, when you get enough of them, then the second and third line managers pay attention. And that's where you get a little bit of top down from that point forward once you've earned your street cred.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I certainly have seen in my career things start to change where you take the nervousness off your shoulders and go, I have to get this partner to a place where I'm confident of putting my VP of sales with their VP of sales, right? My CRO with their CRO. Those kind of like executive alignment is a very, very obtuse and, packed word, but the short end of it should be, is it valuable enough to get our sales teams to align at the leadership level? If not, that I need to go build that value. I need to have that joint value proposition and how, there could be a plan for us to achieve 5 million in sales together, 10 million in sales together. I remember being asked point blank by my CRO at the time, when do I get a meeting with my counterpart at Adobe and why is he going to take that meeting? And I was like, I will have an answer for you on that shortly. But like that exercise of like going, okay, I have the sales leader relationship. I've met with him, right? Like, the EVP of sales, like, has a $1 billion number, right? Like $1 billion number in revenue. How do I make sure that meeting's valuable for my CRO? And like that had to develop into more of a concrete kind of like target plan, right? Where we were identifying the top 10 target accounts. And we didn't bring all of that data to the meeting, but what was so interesting was coming to that meeting with a plan. Hey, we have these 150 target accounts. We've already aligned with your RVP's name, this, and this. Here's kind of like our general messaging. What do we need to suss out of this conversation to know when we both need to get involved and what messages we need to be cascading back down to our field? It seemed like a whole nother value was unlocked once that like executive, hey, we co-sign this plan, go.
Yes, and once you unlock that, once you get a little bit of like field level success, and you get into that second and third line manager relationship, and you want to have that executive alignment, like for me back then, I just sat down with those executives. Once you have the street cred to have that conversation one on one, and just say, hey, whatever your name is, Bob, what are your priorities? What's the number 1 or 2 things you need to accomplish with a field sales organization today? Like, and they already know where they need to win. And back then it was, hey, we need, like PartNUp was like dropping their price significantly and it was killing deals. Reps were having a hard time overcoming that massive difference between PartNUp and Marketo. And that's where I was like, okay, I have to think myself, okay, if I can solve that problem for this third line manager and I can bring that to him on a silver platter, he's going to go top down to everybody in the organization and say, hey, we asked them to solve this problem. They solved it. Let's go run with it. And so that's one way to go. You said, how do you get your CRO to show up and have a great conversation with this person? Well, if you make that conversation all about that vendor's priorities and what they're trying to accomplish and that you're advocating for them, it just goes a really long way from an executive alignment perspective.
Forecastable, when and why did you make the move?
So like when did I go full time, or why did we start it?
Yeah, kind of both.
Or
like, both? Just give me the journey there. I just find it really, I'm curious on the initial impetus, and then when you were like, okay, this is something bigger. I need to make the jump.
Yeah. So this is like, well, actually it's going back to December of 2017. I was in a deal with a Fortune 1000 company. I was technically single threaded. So this is a large deal. We were owned by Vista Equity Partners at the time. This is pre-Adobe acquisition. So the variable compensation plans were outrageous. We're making 43 cents on the dollar, right? So, I had a 1.3 million ARR deal on the table, and I was single threaded, basically with a CMO. So great place to be single threaded, right? They have purchasing authority, they have budget, all these things, but they had a very, very small marketing department of one person, very, very large brand with a very small marketing department. It got to the point where, that was like, a $400,000 commission check for me. It would have been the largest commission check I would have ever made in my career. So it was kind of, life-changing money. And I never made that kind of money before. And it got to the point where I even had the president of Marketo at the time, like on the line with me with the CMO twice. And she's like, man, Alex, this guy loves you. Like he wants to buy from you. And at the end of that, we ended up losing the deal. I got the call and we lost to a vendor whose name I wasn't even familiar with. I never even heard of this company before. It wasn't like I would have been like, not okay, but we lost to Pardot or like, or Oracle or something like that. But it was like a no-name vendor. And I immediately went back and I was like, man, deep breath. Like the day I lost it was hard, but the day, like on January 31st, when I would have had that commission check hit, like that one really got to me. And I started thinking about like, where could I have lost that deal? And it had to have been because of the CFO. Maybe the CFO came down. There's such a large price difference with a no-name vendor. They had to just cut me off at the knees. And I wasn't multi-thread and I didn't build that relationship. And so I started paying a lot more attention, as painfully because of that result. I started paying a lot more attention to being multi-threaded. And then I started thinking, I'm like, how do I keep track of all this stuff? It's like, I've got 10 or 15 deals in the hopper, some are coming up right away and some are, throughout the rest of the year. And I can't memorize every single person and every single deal and keep track of it all in my head and then try to repeat that in my one-on-one to the manager every week. It was nearly impossible. And so at the time I started using Lucidchart. I was like, okay, we had some licenses for that. Let me go build some of these buyer map things, start visualizing my relationships. And I started, showing them in my QBR decks, and it helped me just get way more buttoned up in my sales process. So I started training other reps in the company on how to use Lucidchart and how to build these buyer maps. And even then they came back and they're like, they'd give up on it because it took too long to build it. And so I had another startup prior to this, and I basically went back to that same team and said, hey guys, I think there's an opportunity in enterprise sales to make it easier or more manageable for that mid-market or enterprise rep to visualize their org like really easily and manage all those relationships across a ton of deals without spending a ton of time. And so in January of 2018, that's when we started building. Getting into the partner co-selling stuff. So, if you think about, an odd time to build a sales technology, right? Because you think about the last 8 years, VC money was cheap. It was readily available. People way overbought sales tech. They owned every single tool on the freaking planet, right? And nobody could possibly imagine that you could have like another piece of sales technology would add value to their lives. RevOps people will throw their hands up in 2 seconds and tell you to pound sand. Right. And so as we built all this wonderful technology, it was very difficult to go to market with that. And then it was just really, really hard. And then so I continued building through Perkuto, right? And we're waiting for that exit for me to kind of roll full time into Forecastable. And so I wanted to go, so as soon as we exited Perkuto, my plan was to go stand up customer success, all of our operations in throughout the rest of 2021. And we're going to go to market in January 1st of 2022. And then Crossbeam screwed all that up. Not their fault. They raised a ton of money in October of 2021. They did it in a good way. They raised a bunch of money. Then Reveal later, raised $50 million. And I'm like, okay, there is a lot of attention on co-selling. And I understand co-selling to the nth degree. I've done it my whole career, never formally through the partnerships org. I kind of just did it on my own in the field. And I said, why don't we take all this like wonderful enterprise sales technology that we built and bring it to the co-sell motion so everybody can communicate and collaborate around a deal, regardless of what CRM they're running in the background. So we act as kind of that single pane of glass. And so we spent a year like pivoting almost, even though at our technology, at our core, we're still a sales technology. We spent a year pivoting to be able to enable like that kind of complexity. And that's where we're at today. So to even add more to that story, you get to December of 20. So we launched basically the co-sell stuff back at Catalyst, phenomenal event. We opened up a whole ton of pipeline. Then it's like, boom, economy's starting to go down. Like partnerships, people are getting laid off. It's like a little bit of doom and gloom. I wasn't feeling that great in December. And then, typical startup life, my whole world changes like every 2 minutes. And then come January, now all of these really large deals that we're in are starting to say, how many tools can you replace? Oh, you can replace this sales technology and that sales technology and this, because over 5 years, we built a very robust application. So as you can see, like I couldn't sell any sales tech for the first few years, jumped into partnerships. Now partnerships are getting laid off, but now it's like come full circle. Now it's like, hey, we're willing to buy a bunch of sales tech now. So it's like my world changes all the time.
Man, that's an interesting point about in the cost cutting phase, integrations are important. Like how many other tools, right, can you replace or work with? If you're siloed standalone tool, it's going to get real tough out there.
Integrations are where it's at. We went with an iPaaS solution right out of the gate for that very purpose, time to market. Like, how many integrations can we do to start ingesting as much data as possible, to start basically allowing our customers to leverage the tools they already use in the best possible way. Nobody wants to go buy some big platform anymore and have you do, everything under the sun. Like, that's a waste of time. I think integrations are where it's at. We banked on that one pretty hard.
It's interesting that the next logical extension of the collaborating around accounts and having an account team where, okay, you're starting to map out personas. I mean, these are default fields in Salesforce or HubSpot where you name, the contacts that you're working on in the op, right? And you'll have words and phrases like influencer, decision maker, champion, economic buyer. And the reality is in big enterprise deals, like a lot of those personas need to be checked. If you're selling a 20K, 50K, maybe up to 100K kind of solution, sure, you can be, there's more and more budget pressure these days, but you can get away with a handful of those, like a true champion that's like batting for you all the way, that wants you no matter what, and direct line of access and business case with the economic buyer. That alone can be difficult. The second that you add on top of that, well, I need to orchestrate this across these two tech providers. Maybe it's an ABM platform or sales engagement or, sales intelligence, or maybe it's on the data and IT side, right? Like there's going to be some tech components that are essential to your customers' would-be workflow. And then there might be some expertise around how those solutions work together. And now you're working with some, maybe it's even a former customer, a services partner. Heck, it could even be someone from your CS team or PS team that really helped one of your customers in the past. But the point is that the best sales is done not solo. The best sales is done as a team. Selling is a team sport. And so many people that, fit that lone wolf persona figure out real quick that you can be the one call closer and close those SMB deals all day long, but that shit don't fly in enterprise land.
It doesn't. And when you see reps, and I see them all the time, they're going to get killed. They're going to get killed in their careers over the next couple of years. You get some reps that'll go in doing the same old thing, lone wolf in it, and you'll see them. They job hop. They'll go in. They hopefully get a great patch with a couple of great deals. They do their lone wolf thing. They make a bunch of money. They skate for a year, possibly maybe not do anything else, and hop to the next one and use that first success to go get the next job. And eventually, those guys won't last.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question about the kind of the talent pipeline for all these roles. The type of person that has been attracted to and successful at sort of sales roles often has that lone wolf mentality. And the type of person who, we've seen this, Jared, the last couple of years, people saying, yeah, I didn't like always being the pushy salesperson. I want to work with people and collaborate. So I joined a partnerships team. So I'm wondering if we'll see the reverse. If the sales people that are winning increasingly are those that they like working with a team. They like playing a team sport. They like going at it together. And those traits are getting rewarded more, and the lone wolf is suffering. Maybe some people who had not thought about sales as a good fit for them might start to make that move. I don't know. I'm curious if you think we may see that.
I'd comment on that real quick, in that the bus on the account team doesn't need any more passengers. What it needs is a freaking driver, a leader, right? And I think those leaders are going to have a couple components. This is going to go back to, Sam McKenna, Joe Rowley, kind of like the show me, you know me, meaning subject matter expertise. I think it's very wise the best sellers I know build an expertise over time on an industry, right? Their network compounds. They don't lose their, network from job to job, right? So if you hop from IT to InfoSec to product to SaaS and MarTech and sales tech, like you're starting at ground zero every time. Like these are not concentric buyer circles. So like that's stupid advice number one. Pick something you care enough about to actually help someone, and then you're going to increase your odds of selling. Right. So they need to be leaders of their space. They need to care about what they do. They need to care about the transformation of actually helping, show me, you know me, prove you care, to quote Jill and Sam. And it is a tall task, but there's a lot of money to be made there. I mean, I know a lot of sellers that make way more than their manager or executive counterparts, that they're taking 500, 600K home a year because they kick ass at their job. They're really good at it, and they exhibit these behaviors. I know a handful of them that are still at Adobe that were at Marketo, and they figured out that playbook. They're account team sellers, and they'll bank 500, 600K in a down market on their W-2. So it's leaders that care about their industry, their customer, that they might come from a sales background, they might come from a partner background, but I think the leadership quality is what stands out to me.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think the Marketo, like the quality of talent in the Marketo organization was some of the highest quality talent I've ever worked with. So I'm not surprised that there's a bunch of sellers still there, doing their thing. But in general, getting back to that being a team sport, there's a couple of different things to talk about. One, team sport, and then two, career path. On the team sports side, it's like you have a choice. So I'm speaking a little bit to those sellers that are lone wolfing right now, and you know who you are, right? It's not just about, relying. Yes, you have to now start relying on other people. And yes, they may not do things the way you would have done it. And you have to just be okay with that. Like, I struggle with that a lot. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I wanted things done a certain way. And if you didn't do it, like, I got pissed off about it. I got frustrated with it. I managed it properly, but it was very frustrating on the inside for me. But every single person on that team is somebody you can leverage in your cycle. So like, if I got somebody in my team that, like, a solutions consultant, and if you're paying attention to demo, like, for those folks that are just sitting back and letting demos happen, no, like, I always had the cameras up. I'm looking at everybody's face, or back then we were in the room for most of these conversations, and I'm looking and seeing who's connecting with the solutions consultant, or who's connecting with whatever resources on the line. And if I see that there's a connection there, I make sure to double down on that connection and say, hey, Rick, like one of my favorite solution consultants, I'm like, Rick, hey, can you send an extra note to Sally over here? Because I feel like she really latched onto your experience when you shared this, or that. And that little extra, can you please leverage this person? Like, leveraging your team, like, you're only one person, leverage your full team. So, and then I think the second thing there, you talked a little bit about career, right? And so when I think there's going to be a big shift too, like those sellers that, I think sellers should start viewing partnerships as a promotion path, for one, because now it's almost required. You've got to start co-selling with people. Like, if you're not involving your partners in things, like, you're just having a conversation with yourself, you're not going to do very well in your career. And there's just going to be more and more partnership stuff happening. And so I think those people that have that sales background and understand what it takes to close a deal from a process perspective can now go into partnerships and learn how to do that. Like, those are going to be the partner pros of the future. And the partner pros today that don't have that sales mentality are going to get squeezed out of the business. If you don't start getting that sales mentality, you're going to get squeezed out and replaced by those that do.
Who is going to help create that next generation of sellers? I mean, that's what we're trying to facilitate here in bringing out, shows like Selling Together, and then, kind of like our future relaunch of Partner Hacker, where we have streams for each department. Like, these conversations need to happen, and we need partner people, you listeners out there, to, communicate with us, give us feedback, but share what's standing in the way of you painting that vision for that seller. Right? Like, someone has to tell that salesperson what we just discussed. Is it your VP of sales? I guarantee you she's not saying that right now. Unless, your program's just like, screaming from the rooftops, you're making all money and you're the exception to the rule of the market right now, is that these conversations aren't happening in your sales org. So do you have the confidence to go talk to your sellers and, help them realize how they can have a better career? Like, those have been the partner people that have impressed me the most, that they've gone to the sales org, or they've been in the sales shoes, and they've gone to partner land and gone, look, I get it. Right now you're under pressure for this, this, and this. Here's how I'm going to help you, but you need to meet me halfway. Like, those hard conversations are the things that need to be happening in the field right now.
Well, and I don't think most sellers, I mean, a lot of them don't pay attention to, they're not going to pay attention to the partnerships org. I'd say in a lot of cases, I hate to be harsh here, but like, they're not going to pay attention to the partnerships org. They're probably not going to pay attention to marketing. Their VP can scream from the mountaintops all day, like, hey, by the way, partner co-selling is really good. Increase win rate, increase deal size, shorten cycle. You can say that all day until you're blue in the face. But until that sales rep sees another sales rep that they know and respect do that thing and say, yeah, man, or, like, that dude, I won that deal. because I did this or that, and that partner nailed it for me, and I closed an extra $300,000, and I did it really fast. Like that's when sales reps start paying attention. And so, maybe it's about the win stories, right? But I've seen win stories before. Like everybody wins, and somebody wins. There's a partner involved. A win story email goes out to the entire sales team. Probably 15% of sales reps even read it. It's just not convincing enough. So one thing I used to do, and this was more for account planning stuff, I used to call it, like when I was early in a cycle, I made it so any rep on the sales team could call what we called a relationship roundtable. And all they could do, they book time, they say, hey, I need a relationship roundtable. All the sales reps in the sales team would come together, and we go to that person's one account. We'd all go to LinkedIn and we say, who knows who, where do we have relationships? And we all helped that rep and got behind that rep and said, here's some ideas I have for you. So what if, I'm just thinking about this on the spot, but like, what if you took that same exact concept and brought it to like the partner win story? So now I've got a peer, let's say you're a Fortune 500 company, you got this big sales org, you now need to motivate reps to co-sell more effectively. Why not take that win story and get that rep in the room talking about how they did it, and then have every single rep in that team, I want you to bring one deal to the table, and let's go have this seller whom you respect walk through it and give you ideas on how you could do better with partners and what that might impact. And I think that level of like a peer helping you in that regard will go much further than us trying to do top down or even through enablement. It's got to come from peers, I think.
One of my favorite tactics that I've actually seen work and heard, not just experience firsthand, but seeing stories about in the wild of, hey, we're going to the next phase of our partner program. We're moving from a siloed business unit to, an overlay motion where partner team and sales team are aligned. They're sharing the same, targets, quotas. We figured out a lot of the hard part. Now we have to go do. Here would be my advice for the partner people that are strong-willed enough and you have enough conviction to arm this conversation. Find the person that is the most vocal anti-partner sales rep in the entire company. I mean, the one that talks shit in every single Slack message, is just vile towards partners. And like, I've definitely seen reps that they spare no words, and no 4-letter words enough in their condemnation of, how much they hate partners, and make it your objective to turn that person into the most partner-pilled person in the entire sales org. So you have this plan, you approach them and say, hey, my objective this quarter is to take you from being the most vocal critic of working with partners to our number one supporter. And if I truly help you, my ask is that you'll join me and our CRO at the next QBR to talk about how you went from, I hate partners, I don't want to work with them, to I want partners touching every single deal. And it's almost like that sales rep that, you didn't want to work with, it all of a sudden is like, okay, challenge accepted, right? Like they're going to approach it with a new light. And, the anecdote that I have was with Adobe and a rep that kind of fit this bill. And he didn't fully adopt like the totality of like, let's say, service partners, but on every single deal, he had at least one tech partner involved and was using it to navigate procurement better. He was using it to navigate budget objections, a whole bunch of different issues that he wasn't before. And at the end of it all, he's like, yeah, I mean, pretty much, I haven't cracked the code on how to like source new pipeline, but I've saved so much time on my deals. My win rate's higher. And yeah, I'm partner pilled.
And for those sales folks listening, it's frankly no different than working your normal, a normal sales cycle. You have an opponent in your deal who may be a vocal advocate, or a vocal opponent, right? Maybe they're advocating for, a competitive solution. And if you can convert that opponent into an advocate for you, like that, all these other people that were on the fence before, they might have been in that neutral zone, not quite a supporter, not quite an opponent. You now convert them into advocates. So I think that's right in line.
There was one anecdote that stood out to me where literally we had one of these calls with a tech partner. This anti-partner rep shows up and he's like, oh yeah, I'm so glad to connect with you guys. They were just asking me the other day about this vendor, and you. So I'm happy to connect with you because I kind of was like, take your pick. Right. And it like that moment, it was like, you see how not being in that conversation, how like you not caring about this person at all could have some influence when you're not in the room. Tying this all back together, we're in the triple digit land, episode 101. This is from our very first guest, Bobby Napoltonia. So I know that there's something good here if we just uncovered that, and it's advice that Bobby gave me. Bobby told me about the story. So Bobby was the head of Salesforce's partner program under Benioff. So the creation of the App Exchange, Accenture, like the guy, right? Crazy guy. I love Bobby. But what he told me is he said, look, the way that anything changes in business is to get the big dog and to make the rest fall behind, not the other way around. So in that respect, how did Salesforce break out of tech companies and financial services? Well, they weren't trying to win all the small financial services companies. They went after Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, boom, knock those out. The rest of financial services fell, right? Like the rest of the market collapsed behind them. Okay, how are they going to win, Accenture away from Siebel and these other platforms? Well, it wasn't by winning 500 other service partners. It was by working with like 2 or 3 and taking Accenture's top accounts, showing them a lot of pain, right? Then they made Accenture fall, boom, the rest of the services and consulting industry fell behind them. Hey, so there's some good advice there. Maybe instead of trying to work with your top, your bottom percentile reps that are like, hey, I'll work with anything. There's no way I'm getting to my quota, right? Go take that top one that's always at the top. That's like, no, I don't want to get partner pilled. Go work with them, turn them into an advocate. Watch the rest of your sales org, fall in line. Isaac, what do we got to tell the peeps about this week? We're bringing back PLX, right?
I mean, in addition to the Together Network, which by the way, this episode was like selling together all over it. So some good crossover content. Definitely check out. These are phenomenal. These shows are phenomenal. Marketing Together with Logan Lyles, Selling Together with Jessie Shipman, and they both have a weekly newsletter that is just so good. These are like really high quality stuff. So a huge recommendation there. If you go to partnerhacker.com, you can see, you click podcasts, absolutely get those into the hands of your counterparts, get those in the hands of people in sales and marketing. But PLX is coming soon, very soon. The moment returns. So it's going to be, all I'll say is it's going to be bigger and better than ever. That's it. I'm just going to leave you with that. Keep it mysterious.
That's all you'll say. Okay. I won't let any more cats out of the bag, but will pre-reg be live? PLXsummit.com?
Should be March 1st. That's the target. PLXsummit.com.
March 7th. So yeah, we're March 7th, every Tuesday, PartnerUp, new episode, Tuesday morning. So March 7th should be the day that you're listening to this. So PLXsummit.com for pre-reg. It's live, people. Back and better. All right. Alex, thanks so much for joining us on PartnerUp.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Isaac, till next time, my man. Audience, thank you so much. We will see you all in the interwebs. Peace.